Good evening and welcome to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen meeting. It is January 5th, 2023. It is 7 p.m. Call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. I will have the prayer tonight, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be with Alderwoman Haas. If everyone would please rise for the prayer and the pledge. Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, we just ask that you would put your healing hand upon this city to melt and mend hardened hearts, to get everyone working together, to get them working to benefit each other and not themselves. We ask, Lord, that you would watch over our men and women, both serving in emergency and both serving all across this nation and world. We ask all this in your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is to approve the minutes from the September 6, 2022 regular meeting and the December 6, 2022 regular meeting.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 6th and the December 6th regular meetings.
Have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I second.
Second from Vice Mayor No. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes. Moving on to departmental reports. Chief Davis.
As promised from last month, if you look at the second slide, you will see the data from November 9th through November 30th. You can see that information there. And if you go to the next page, you will see the numbers for the month of December for that. Just some highlights. You will see that car burglaries, theft from motor vehicles. We had six cases in the month of December. All vehicles left unlocked and normal hours between 12 midnight and 6 a.m. The good part about it is there's no weapons in the hands of bad guys right now. And if you go on through your packet, you also see LPD activity. As you can see, the men and women, even though we're shorthanded, you can see that they're still busy working. 3,459 calls for service, 150 arrests, and 902 traffic stops that resulted in 20 DUI arrests and 49 drug arrests. So kudos to the men and women for working hard as they are. Any questions?
Chief, do you want to talk a little bit about the accreditation?
So we got word today. We set application to begin the accreditation process through Tennessee Association of Chiefs of Police back in September. And the accreditation program is something that's really nationwide for police departments to have a set standard for every officer across the board. You know, like one shift wouldn't do it one way, another shift. So it's a way that the department adopts through Tennessee Association of Chiefs of Police. And we got our information today that we was accepted into the program to start our process for accreditation. Now that we've been accepted, we got 3 years to get it done. So it's going to be a madhouse at LPD for us, but it's going to be huge for the city. It's never been done. We've attempted, but we got to the policy part of it and just kind of fell off. So this is really huge for us. I got people in place that's actually dealing with accreditation and accreditation only. So I think it's going to be successful this time.
Wonderful. You want to have any other questions? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Moving on to the fire department, Chief Beasley.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Alderman. Just as each month, I'm sure you've had an opportunity to review our reports. And of course, you have the month of December reports in front of you, but you also have the year-end report for 2022. There is a typo up there at the top. I'm sure y'all noticed that. It looks like we've had about a 10% increase in our runs, about 300 runs more than we had last year, which is trademarking or trending as we were the year before that. A vast majority of them, again, are in medical. 2,718 runs this year versus 2,500, so about a 200 plus change in runs or an increase in runs. And that's why we focus so diligently on training our people to treat what our citizens need the most. Medical training, 80% of our run volume is there. We did have an increase in motor vehicular accidents, a couple of extra fires that did not occur last year. But most everything else is on par from where we were this time last year. This was an extremely busy year for the Laverne Fire Department. Not only did we increase by 300 runs, but we completed our ISO evaluation. We're still waiting on reports from the Insurance Service Office on that. It's been an extremely, extremely busy year, and I'd like to take my hat off to the firefighters, this department, the men and women that serve every single day. Also, if I could, Mayor, you and I talked Tuesday night about Community Connect. Hopefully tomorrow, you'll see some push out from some social media sites about the Community Connect that you can find on Laverne or fire.lavernetn.gov, where citizens, business owners can go to that website, click onto the link for the Community Connect. That allows each person within the city to give us what information they would like to know about their home or their business. Tell us how many people live there. Maybe you have a senior adult or a child living on the second floor. Most of us are old enough to remember the Tot Finder stickers on the windows. This is like an electronic version of that for the firefighters. So as we're en route to the house, we can review that information and we can know that we have specific needs. You can even take pictures of your dogs, post those up there, as well as locations for your gas shutoffs, water shutoffs, any special needs that you may have for the home. So it's a very critical tool for our firefighters that we've never had before, decision making.
I believe we had a few already take some photos and upload them, haven't we?
Oh, yes, sir. We've probably got 60 plus people in the last 3 months upload information, and I'm saying we probably, of those 60 people, we've got no less than 40 or 50 pictures of canines. So it is an incredible tool, without a doubt. And it's like I said, it's like the old Tot Finder that I had on my window when I was a child. So that information stays within the website. It's not available to anybody else other than emergency personnel, so it's a secure site as well.
And Chief, you also had some staff members get some accreditation, some certifications just recently. Is that right?
This is an incredibly busy. We had a number of people get their firefighter 1, firefighter 2, instructor certifications, fire officer certifications. I've not posted yet because the complete numbers have not came in, but we had 12 people complete EMT, advanced EMT training. We're waiting on the state certifications on that. Some of them already returned, but I don't want to post that until we get our final numbers on those. But again, at this point, we have 36 personnel in the streets every day, if I remember correctly, that have EMT basic or advanced EMT, and 1 paramedic serving the citizens. Again, that's 80% of our run volume. That's where the bread and butter is for the city. And if you look at community risk reduction, we're meeting the needs on top of the fires that we work. But we concentrate on the numbers as well.
Does anyone have any other questions?
We got sidetracked yesterday, Chief, talking, and
Yes, sir.
I meant to ask you, are we still doing the smoke alarm system? And if we are, what is the criteria?
There is no criteria. If you call and request to our fire admin office or go through the Laverne fire.lavernetn.gov, I think that, to me, that's the easiest way to get to us because it's documented. You can request smoke alarms. We'll install smoke alarms in all the appropriate locations in the home, outside the bedrooms, 1 in a central location, at 0 cost to the citizen.
Okay, and my next question is, how's the mud hole?
It's wet. It's wet. We met Tuesday or Wednesday on that, and we've got some things to deal with. Kyle and myself have got some decisions to make, but you're in the construction business. It's this time of year. January, February is going to be a difficult time to try to get some concrete on the ground to start the construction process. But it is a swamp.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Chief Beasley, I just want to be clear. When were you first notified of the water outage in the South Waldron community?
When I recognize it on social media.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, moving on to Parks and Recreation, Mr. David McGowan.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Board, thank you. You guys have the parks numbers for the month. You see the help desk tickets there, 72. Man hours devoted to those, 583.5. See some of the past projects that we've worked on this past month. Upcoming events, January 16th, Martin Luther King Jr. celebration at 10 a.m. February 4th will be the father-daughter dance at the multipurpose building, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Under the Sea is the theme. Mermaids will be on site for photo ops. You see some of the past senior events there, a couple of upcoming senior events. Upcoming meetings, Senior Center Committee meeting, 4:30, January the 23rd. Also on the 23rd is the Park and Rec meeting at 6, and the Beautification and Arts Committee meeting at 7 p.m. Martin Luther King, I just want to go back to that real quick. I encourage everybody that has the opportunity to please come out. We have some awesome guest speakers lined up. That is going to be at the multipurpose. At 10, if you're off that day, please come out. If you can, if you're working, you take an early lunch, come out and see it. We're very excited. Shamil Balbalosa is going to be one of our guest speakers, along with John DeBerry. He's an amazing man, has an amazing story to tell. Actually marched with Dr. King and was in the audience for his last speech the day before he was assassinated. So that opportunity to hear firsthand that knowledge and that experience is not going to come around that often, so we are very excited to be able to book him to come to Laverne. Any questions?
Thank you, David.
Yep, thank you.
Moving on to the Library Department, Ms. Donna Bebout.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Aldermen, good evening. You see our monthly statistics there. A little bit low, but we were closed several days during the month of December. We did some inventory, we did some maintenance in the library. So we feel pretty good about that. We're going to move on up, though. We did get 47 new patron cards, and we're happy about that. On our programs, there were 11 for ages birth to 17 with an attendance of 166. And then I want to talk just a second about two special events that we had. The Laverne High School Junior ROTC had a reading night. And you can see a picture there at the bottom of the report. There we go. That is the Wolverine Battalion, and they are the ones who created the books that were read that night based on the 7 values of the Army, or the Army's 7 values. Get that right in a moment. So we were very happy to have them. They were very excited to be there, and we were excited to have them. So January at the library, story times are going to resume on Monday morning. So we want to encourage all of our Storytime people to come on back, and we encourage new people to come join us. We do offer story times and arts and crafts activities for all ages, from birth all the way up to 99 plus. The library will be closed on Monday, January 16th, in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We do hope that some of our patrons will come out and join the Parks and Rec team at Multipurpose Building. I think it's going to be a great celebration. I know I'm looking forward to it. In honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., 2 of my newest staff members created a display. I would love for you to come by and see it. This picture really doesn't do justice. Jonathan Skinner and Rosie Civilay created this display for us, and their very first one since being hired into the library. So proud of them. We are going to try to start a new program. It is going to be called Intro to Financial Education. This is going to be presented by Mark Pretty, and I should have had his bio. I do not, but he is very educated, very knowledgeable on all financial areas. And I just want to read it verbatim for you. It says, join us at the Laverne Public Library for the first education presentation on financial literacy. The first course on financial literacy will cover the basics of financial education and literacy, including core financial concepts and the importance of managing personal finances. January is a good year to look into that and to get started. The suggested ages are ages 17 and over. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to read 2 paragraphs. Financial literacy refers to the ability of using knowledge and skills to make informed and responsible decisions about personal financial matters. This presentation will provide an overview of these concepts and discuss the importance of financial education and literacy in managing personal finances and achieving financial goals. Throughout each course, we will discuss financial concepts such as saving, investing, budgeting, as well as the broader economic and financial environment. Mark wanted to give back to the community. He was very much an avid reader when he was younger. He would come to the library, and he said it's kind of like coming home. And so this is a free course that he is doing for us. It will be the first one on January the 12th at 5 p.m. That's a Thursday night. So we would love to have some people come out and give us some feedback if this is a course that they would like to have continued. The library board will meet Monday here at City Hall at 5 p.m. Do you have any questions?
Bless you. Thank you, Ms. Donna.
Thank you.
Moving on to the Finance Department, Ms. Tanya.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Aldermen. You have the financial summary in front of you. I'm just going to touch on some highlights. In the general fund, year-to-date, our expenses exceeded revenue by $161,321. Our local sales tax year-to-date number was $6,589,603, which is $1,589,603 above our budget. It's also $658,000 above our prior year. Our state street aid, the revenue exceeded expenses by $125,000. Stormwater expenses exceeded revenue by $73,000. In our water and sewer fund, revenue exceeded expenses by $6,380,045. Just a reminder, the reason that's significantly higher is we did receive the second half of our ARPA funds, which was $5.3 million. Second page you have is just our balances on our bank accounts. The third page is our comparison to prior year. In our general fund, revenues were up $212,000, expenses were up $334,000. In our water sewer fund, revenue was up $5.5 million, expenses were up $291,000, and our water and sewer tap fees were down $37,000. Questions?
Does anyone have any questions?
No questions, just a statement. You're doing a great job. When you're presenting us these numbers and stuff, I like that, the way you do it. And I know Phyllis is about to check out on us, and I just want to say if you learn to make biscuit and gravy as good as she does, you'll be happy.
I've already been asked that. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Oh, you have, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to water treatment plant, Mr. Wayne Lowry.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Alderman, pleasure to be here this evening. I know you all have the report. I hope you had a chance to run through it. I would prefer, if everyone's agreeable, that we just skip and discuss the Christmas water event, being that is a subject of discussion. I'm going to kind of give you a timeline of the things that happened from the water plant on out. So we'll start with December 23rd, which was a Friday. At approximately 12:30-ish in the morning, some weather was coming through. We had some power blips, and we lost our SCADA signal to our McFarland tank. So the McFarland tank, you know, is a small tank in comparison to everything else out in the system. It decided that it was going to be at 581% full. Obviously, that wasn't happening because we didn't have ice everywhere. But we were able to control that manually because we could see the discharge pressure off of our pumps. So when the pressure got to 81 pounds, we turned a pump on. When it got to 87 pounds, we shut a pump off. So we were able to cycle that manually. Then at approximately 4:30 a.m., we had some power blips that came through, and it tripped the main breaker on a raw water building. Now, the power was not off long enough for a generator to run, The main plant was fine, but the main breaker for the raw water plant was stuck in a trip position. So we came out, we looked at it, and typically you could take the pressure off by just killing all your electrical power, reset your breaker, and then start everything back up. That did not work. So we called Eaton out to do it. They came out at approximately 9 a.m. Unfortunately, they brought an 800 amp breaker, and it needed to be a 600 amp breaker. But in the meantime, they also needed NES to come out to kill the power to do the work that they needed to do. So NES came out quickly to kill the power. They came back with the right breaker, but with the changes of design over the years, that breaker did not match up in hole alignment, so he had to manufacture some stuff to get the breaker to fit in. Once the breaker repair was done, we needed NES to come back out. That took a little bit longer for them to arrive. Took approximately an hour and a half for them to show back up to turn the power back on. So the challenges we were facing at the time. So to give you the duration, we were not pumping water from Percy Lake to the plant for about 13 hours. From about 4:30-ish to about 6:30, we did not pump water into the distribution system. We were trying to conserve water at the plant, not realizing how long this was going to take, but then we turned the pumps back on. We had about 89% or so in our Sanders tank, and Sanford Knob was showing us at 78%. Hindsight being 20/20, which it always is, we noticed that Sanford Knob started flatlining at about 4:46 in the morning. So about 15 minutes after the issue with the raw water plant. So, we were looking at things, we were running the system, conserving water, looking at the knob, saying, okay, we got 78%, we're good, Sanders looks good, let's slow the plant down, that way we can hold the water in a clear well, we'll get this raw water. And then as the day goes along, we're managing it to what we believe to be accurate. Sanders was going down a little bit, but nothing that was detrimental. We got the plant back up and running at, it was roughly 5:30 p.m., and we started treating water again. Saturday morning, so Christmas Eve morning, we come in, we had 89% in Sanders, which is almost full. We run it to about 94%. And the clear well was full, and Sanford Knob was still showing 78%. Well, we caught the Sanford Knob issue Friday evening about 9 o'clock. We got a hold of the on-call person. There is a gauge on the tank. It's basically, I call it a glorified float, because it just floats in the tank and just moves the gauge up and down. That gauge read the tank at 41 feet. I almost said percent, Kyle, you called me on it. Which calculates to be 89% full. So I was like, oh, good, we pumped some water into the tank. Now, we checked that again at noon, and it was still 41 feet. So something was kind of a little messed up there. And then approximately, I don't know if I have that in my notes, 7 o'clock Saturday night, the gauge fell, and it went down to 7 feet. So something was holding it up, keeping it stuck there. So when you look at Plan A is SCADA, use your SCADA system. Plan B is to use the float. Both of those failed, so now we're on Plan C. And in the whole meantime of this, we've been working with Michael Dietz and his crew on this issue. On Christmas Eve, because Sanders' tank was running low, Mike was looking at trying to get a pump in to connect to Smyrna in case we needed it. Being it's the holidays, trying to do it. He thought he had one coming from Illinois, but he didn't. We ended up finding one coming from New Jersey, and we all thought, well, that's not going to get here. But he moved forward with that. Well, at the meantime, we were still pumping. Saturday night at about 11:30-ish or so, the plant was struggling treatment-wise. When we shut the raw water pumps off for 13 hours and turned them back on, we brought in a slug of mud. And super pulsators don't like mud. So we were able to go approximately 24 hours before it started impacting us. But it started impacting us, and we had to make some treatment changes and some decisions. Danny Campbell came in Christmas Eve at about midnight, and he started working on maybe 1 in the morning. In the meantime, communication between Danny and Michael Dietz was happening, and we got a new reading of the Sanford knob that showed it to be very low at about 3:50 in the morning. Now, we were able to run Mason Road pumps, all three of them. We were running the pumps based upon the information that we had. So on the Friday, December 23rd, we didn't run them because it looked like it was full. On Saturday, we ran them. And on Saturday night, we had shut it off. And then when Mike called us with the numbers, we turned them right back on. And they were running. And we switched to reading the tanks with the pressure gauge off the hydrant that associated with the tank. And the plant was turned around. The plant was producing water. We were pumping over 5 million gallons a day out the door to the community from there. And Sanders was still dropping, and we were still pumping from Mason Road. So at 4 in the morning, we turned Mason Road back on when we got the very low tank reading. At 3:30 in the afternoon on Christmas Day, because the 3:50 in the morning was actually Christmas Day, Christmas Eve night into Christmas Day. 3:30 in the afternoon, we got a tank reading that showed that we're about 75% full at Sanford Knob. At 6 o'clock-ish, we were told it was 60% full, and we were pumping. And in order to fill up Sanders, we stopped pumping for a little bit, just to let things balance with Sanders. And then at 7:20, we were told it was very low again. So we started pumping again. So through all that, we had some issues with the SCADA system. We had some issues, obviously, with the float that was on the tank. And we had some issues with the hydrant gauges and what actually was happening within the distribution system. The interesting thing for us, from our side, at least from Infomark's point of view, there is a number that people call to file complaints about the water at the water plant. We only received 13 phone calls. We received one on Christmas Day. And that one was to let us know that somebody's neighbor's pipe burst. We received, and I have this in front of me, if I turn it the right way, 5 on Christmas Eve, one of them from the same address, and all saying low pressure. Now, what we do as your operator is we turn those over to Public Works, as this is what it is, and then they go investigate them. And everyone that I know that Mike's aware of that they investigated, they had water. There was water there. The pressure was lower, but there was water. And on December 26th, we had 7 of them. Two of all these were in the Sanders zone. The other ones we believe to be in what would be fed from Sanford Knob. But all of them had water, lower pressure, but water. Mike told me when we were talking throughout this that there was issues that they received on call, and most of them were frozen meters, busted meters, frozen service lines. And even when they hooked up the Smyrna pump, it actually came in from New Jersey at approximately noon to 1 o'clock on Monday, December 26th, which when you think about that, considering the weather that was happening across the United States, that's actually remarkable. And, Xylem should be thanked for getting that to us as quickly as they did. But when he was hooking that up, he was even having conversations with people saying, thank you, but I have water, but it's lower pressure, but I still have water. So from our knowledge, it seems like, yes, we're low on pressure, but it's not a big event. It's a big concern, but it's not a big event. That's two separate things. We want to take care of the concern before it becomes an event, if that makes sense in the way that I say it. So the information we had in our hand was we got low water. We know we got low water. We had a plan in place. We were working through the plan, and we put everything on. It took approximately, the Smyrna pump was connected and turned on at 6:49 p.m. on December 26th. It took that long because everything has to be fabricated on site when that pump comes. So it's not just a plug and play. You have to build it. So that was turned on. We were still feeding water through Mason Road. We fed with Smyrna and Mason Road all of December 27th. And Smyrna pump was shut off on December 28th at about 9 p.m. And we have been running smoothly ever since. You know, the plant has been producing a lot of water through this whole event. We were up, like I said, over 5 million gallons out the door. We were treating about 6.7 million gallons of raw water. The hiccup was on the 24th, but we recovered from that quickly. And there's just, it's one of those things where you look back and you go, what could we do different? How can we make this better? What can we learn from this? Well, one of the things that me and Danny have talked about is, you know, getting a better idea of the pressure in the system. What can we do? Is there pressure gauges that we could go physically read that are in place that, because SCADA's out, so can we go physically read them? We had a meeting on Tuesday, and we're going to be working on how do we make that better. We also can talk about SCADA and alarms that can give us, even before it can go out, to say, hey, the pressure is lower than this set point. What would that be? We'll have to build that out, you know. But that is something I think is critical that we've talked about throughout the SCADA project of things that we could do to make this better. And pressurizing the system by knowing the pressure numbers. You know, we were, honestly, there's part A and part B failed because, you know, the SCADA system stuck, the float stuck, and then the tank readings were working, or the hydrant readings were working, and then it bottomed out, and we were just pumping. So I don't know if that helps. I don't know if that explains anything. I feel like I should answer more questions now than I should be talking. So if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to field them.
Well, first off, I'm going to chime in because I know I spoke with some residents over in the Ridge, Woodland Hills, and Summit View that, and over in Dove Creek that didn't have water at various times. Michael, I believe I was working with you on some of the Ridge people at the very last minute whenever everything got hooked up. So while this may not be a huge event to y'all, to the people who were impacted during Christmas, it was.
No,
So,
and don't let me, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mayor, but don't let me mistake. At the time, it didn't feel like an event. When you look back, it is definitely an event. If you look at any of the emails I've sent, I call it the Christmas water event. So I don't want to be mistaken. It's just, you know, level of information that you have at that moment made it feel different than what it ended up being, if that makes sense.
So for me, the big thing is, number one, because I know we've met, I know you've been working with staff, and have we identified action items that either have already been put in place or are being put in place to prevent this in the future? Some of it, I know you can't prevent weather. I mean, weather's going to be weather, but to prevent this in the future. And if so, what are those?
So it's one of the things we've been talking about, at least from Infomark's point of view. We already have a process in place of working with the city. Mm-hmm. So when we see something, when we work with Michael Dietz and his team, and the response has always been great, the collaboration is always great. And we're like, what can we do differently? Well, one of the things to talk about is the pressures, getting better pressure in the system. So when you look at the situation, what could we have done different? Well, we couldn't do anything different at the water plant. It was run as hard as it can run. What we could have done differently is we could have ran Waldron Road and Mason Road together and say, all right, we now can run 3 pumps at Mason Road, and we would confer to make sure that that was acceptable with Michael Dietz and his team on the situation at hand, because if he's got a main break somewhere, he may not want all 3 pumps on until he gets that fixed. So we would have to collaborate with that. We could also run Waldron. The SCADA system, we've talked about that. I mean, can we get alarms when there's power? Yeah. When there's no power, it doesn't help us. There's really no help. But we also talked about, can we install physical gauges so that in the event this were to happen again and we need to go physically to the site and read something, that is strategically placed based upon the hydraulics of that area, so we know exactly what the pressure is in that area. Not necessarily on the suction side of a pump or the discharge side of a pump, but at the base of a tank. So that we could say, hey, I have 15 pounds of pressure in this tank, which is approximately 37 feet of water. So that we can do the math and understand what we have. So that was being discussed. And a lot of this needs to be put on SCADA systems so that we could trend it, so that we could determine what is normal. Because if you could put a pressure gauge out there, and if you go check it once every 2 years, once every year, when an event does happen, you don't necessarily know what normal is. So getting it on SCADA so you can trend it, and even when the SCADA goes out, at least we have a physical device that we could walk to and look at, drive to, whatever the case may be. So communication-wise, the plan's already in place with that, Mayor, and that went well. Danny and Mike, and you know, we all work together. Danny talked with me, I talked with Mike, I talked with Kyle, I talked to Bruce, I talked to you about, you know, at least the NES power thing, to see if you could help us get that done a little faster. But it's I don't think that it's internally on the process that we have in place, communication's an issue at all. It's just, even if we were to, we talked today about what if we put in heaters? Well, it doesn't do you any good when the power goes out. If it's that cold and power goes out, you still have the same problem. You all don't have the same type of weather as I do back home, and it would not make financial sense to do some of the builds that are done with what you have because the costs run high. But, you know, we could still continue to talk through that to say, is there better things to do? I mean, mind you, this is 1 week later, so there's still a lot of discussion that's gonna happen that we're gonna learn from. There's still data to file through to say, you know, more lessons learned. What can we do differently?
Bruce, Kyle, y'all are both the city administrators, assistant city administrator. Do y'all want to weigh in on this event and as far as the other side of it, the city side, and just kind of talk any about that or your thoughts about what we can do differently?
I think in the future, you know, this SCADA project that we're having designed right now is one of the things that with this event happening, as Dwayne's stating, is I think we can make sure if there's any improvements or any pressure readings that we need at locations with the alarms and stuff like that, that would be a huge benefit that we know that now, that we can get it into the project, that in the future, hopefully, we get some alarms and stuff like that, because what you had is an event that really when we was getting information, we were getting the information that they were seeing, but that was not correct information. I mean, when you go to a tank that the SCADA is telling you it's at 78%, you get out to the site because you're like, okay, this can't be right because it's stuck on that. You go out to the site, it says 41 feet. Okay, do we have 41 feet in there or do we not? So, you know, you're going by the information you have, and until we realize that, hey, that's stuck at 41 feet. We didn't know it was stuck at 41 feet, or nobody that went out in the field to look at it didn't know that. Like Dwayne said, hindsight is 20/20. You see later on that it goes to, what was it, 7 feet or something like that. When it dropped, clearly it was froze. So we just so happened to have SCADA that had stuck. We had the gauge on the side of the tank that stuck. Then, you know, they went to option C as far as looking at pressure at the hydrant to see if they could determine, you know, okay, well, this is what we feel is in the tank. At that point, like he said, they were doing different pumping scenarios is the best way, I think, to put it, that will give you water in different locations at different times. So you're not only just, I'm only filling up Sanders or I'm only filling up Sanford Knob, you're putting water in either all locations or you're putting it in Sanford Knob. When you're doing that, of course, you're pressurizing the system, because if you're getting water in the tank, basically the whole system, because I know fire's been mentioned. To my knowledge, I don't know that anybody went and connected to a hydrant that said there was no water, that there was low pressure. I don't think anybody can determine that fire was an issue, because if we were filling the tank, it had to be pressurized. So that's one of the things I think a lot of it could be, and that's what I find also that we need to, like you said, it's only been a week after. I know a lot of people are throwing out the term water outage, but going from the information I received, it was basically low pressure. And
Excuse me.
we're talking, I mean, it's just, that's one of the things that if there was no water, you know, how many people contacted Dwayne or how many people contacted On Call? I know Dietz had an on-call guy that was getting 80-something calls. Okay, in the future, we may have to have 2 or 3 on-call guys because one on-call guy cannot keep up with the amount of calls that we were getting. And so what I'm saying is when you're looking back at the complaints, to my knowledge, the ones that we had that said no water was almost every one of them meter busted, meter froze, service line froze. That has nothing to do with the pressure in the system. So, like I said, kind of what Dwayne was saying through the whole thing is, with the information we had, we made the best decisions that we could. Basically, Dietz, in my opinion, made an outstanding call on Saturday night to go ahead and get the pump en route because the pump does cost money. It's going to cost. So, do you really need it? Do you not? He just felt that something just didn't add up, so he said he went ahead and made the call. And I'm glad he did. The pump got there as quick as it could get there. That's the quickest we could get hooked up to Smyrna. When we got hooked up to Smyrna and got caught back up, we've had no problems. What happened was we had an event to where the power was out and then the SCADA was wrong. And then we made decisions based on information that was bad. So how do we fix that in the future? We try to make sure that SCADA gives us proper information. Hopefully we can do things to where he's talking about on heaters and stuff. What we feel like happened on the tanks is some components probably when the power went out, they were off long enough because they're usually a battery backup. We feel that the battery, because of the temperature, did not keep those components basically running. So what happened? They lost programming. So is there SCADA components out there that, you know, do not lose the programming, or is that something that's common? Is there something that we can have besides the battery backup that would keep it from losing? Because if that's going to happen every time, then, you know, that's something we can look for. This is something that we never had happen, so I don't think we looked for right off the beginning that, hey, this is going to happen. So I know I probably didn't answer everybody's questions, and I know I probably made some people not happy, but, you know, we can only do with what information we have.
The one more thing, if I could jump in, that popped in my head as Kyle was talking, and, you know, it's an expensive option, but there's also an option of having generators out at the sites. So if you lose power, you have generators. So SCADA PLCs don't lose their programming immediately. They lose their programming after being off for a while. So both McFarland and Sanford now both lost their program. That's with those units being off for a while. So whether we have battery backup, maybe bigger battery backups, like maybe even something that can run a heater to keep something warm, or a small gen set that's set that when the power fails, it kicks on. That's an option, so that at least the SCADA won't drop, and we can keep the signal coming. Now, the two things that were wrong, and I'm going to get these wrong because every time I get told them, they go in one ear and out the other. I don't know why they don't stick in my head. But one of them at the knob had to do with a component that was loose, that was felt it was totally weather related, that the connection wasn't right. That if it would have been warmer, that connection wouldn't have failed, but he had to reset that, and because it was down for so long, it had to be reprogrammed. The other part with McFarland was also weather related, and for the life of me, I cannot remember exactly what happened with that one, but they were both weather related. That if there would have been heat, probably wouldn't have happened. Now, the loose component thing, there's kind of a underlying blessing there, because that would have failed at some point because it wasn't seated properly as an electronic component. But it just happened to fail when it got cold.
Michael, is there anything you want to add from this whole event for the board, or anyone has any other questions?
I've got a quick question regarding the communication systems and the messages. Who gets those messages? Who logs those messages? Because I'm a little confused, because I know I personally live in the Ridge, and I had 7 residents of the Ridge who told me they called Christmas Day and reported no outage, and it's just difficult for me to believe that those 7 calls you reported today were those residents.
There's 2 different methods that the citizens have. They have our water complaint hotline, which we only received 1. So our operators get those calls, they take those calls, they log those calls. But there's also a number on the website that they could call to get a hold of on-call on the city site. I don't have view to that. And I'm not saying that, from my perspective, we had one that came to the plant directly.
Gotcha.
So there's just two avenues that the community could reach out to. And, maybe in the lessons learned, we clarify those avenues a little better.
So going back, Michael, is there anything you want to add from this weather event from your side of things? Because we're trying to paint the whole picture for everyone, and, so they get the whole sides.
Yes, sir, and just to echo what, has already been mentioned, it was an event. I felt like that event was managed to the best of our ability. I want this board and the citizens of Laverne to know that. There's always going to be criticism and questions of what we could have done differently, and that's what we will learn from. That's our goal, is to learn from this event, what can we do differently to make it better next time. However, going back, would I made any changes different during this event? I can't say that I would. I feel like we managed it. I feel like we maintained the water in the system to the best of our ability. We got it restored as quickly as we possibly could over a holiday weekend, and I'm very proud of my team at the Public Works Department.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone have any questions for Dwayne or Michael?
Well, did Smyrna have an issue with their water system? I know we got water from them, but what is Smyrna doing different than we are if they didn't have no issues?
Sir, I can't speak to that because I don't know how their system's laid out, but to my knowledge, they did not have any issues. We're thankful that they're a great neighbor, and we have a policy in place where we can get water when needed, if needed.
And I will chime in. Our neighbors to the north, Davidson County, did have significant problems. Whenever the news reported on Laverne, it was as a footnote to the fact that Nashville had an under-the-river break on top of all of their other breaks.
Yes, sir. And if I may, just real quick, another side note here, the water event was one issue, but I'd also like to recognize all the guys and gals that worked during the winter event throughout the snow and ice, because there was a lot of hours that was put in there to make sure that the road was cleared for the citizens of Laverne as well, emergency services. So just like to recognize those guys as well.
Anyone have any other questions for Dwayne or Michael?
So, in your opinion, because I dealt with it, do you think those glitches from the electrical had anything to do with the SCADA and power? And
It's a difficult question to answer,
I
but
know.
my opinion is it definitely did on the raw water plant, tripping that breaker. And I'm not 100% certain that it had any, it might have had some play with the tanks, but I think that was more of maybe the glitch and the cold weather at the same time. But we're at the plant, we're not at the tanks. So I can't 100% say that those glitches even happened at those tank sites. We know they happened at the plant, because we were physically present.
And Carl brought up a good point. He talked about the fire hydrants. So we really don't know if the fire hydrants had water or not. Is that a fair statement?
So, to that, Vice Mayor, so that was thought of during the event as well by me personally. And to my knowledge, we was pumping 200,000 gallons a minute from Mason Road Pump Station into the south part of Laverne, which would provide 2,000 gallons a minute in the event of a fire. We had the ability to kick on a third pump, which would have added another 1,000 gallons per minute to that system. Now, if we had gotten much lower in the Sanders water tank, then yes, sir, that call would have been made. So during the event, it was thought of, but the concern was not as high as priority as getting the Smyrna connection hooked up.
And if I can add a little bit to that. So these tanks have to be taken out for maintenance. And Sanford Knob has been out of service, where we fed the system through Mason Road and Walden Road. So it's not that you can't have fire protection with the tank out of completely empty, 2 foot of water, 5 foot of water. You still can have fire protection. You're just feeding it from a different methodology because the tank is out of service. So we could have turned, and if there was something like that would have happened, we could have turned more pumps on.
How long would that take in case of an emergency? Do we
Second.
have seconds or minutes?
It doesn't take long. As soon as we get the phone call, it's a click of a button and it turns on. And if we have to drive to it, whatever drive time it is from the plant to there, or from wherever one of his guys might be, it might even be closer, in case the SCADA wouldn't turn it on. It's not a long time to do that.
In which we was already providing 2,000 gallons per minute that we knew was leaving the pump.
So the terminology came up over this is the perfect storm. And from everything you've talked about, that's exactly what it was, from an ungodly cold for this area, electric, data, just everything. Once you got everything up and running, and I'm gonna put Michael or Kyle on the spot, if we were not in this ridiculous predicament we're in with Stones River, would those tanks have filled up better, quicker if we had those lines put in?
Yeah, you're talking about the 24
Yes,
inch.
yes.
Yes, if that line was in, we can pump max. I mean, we can get 10 million gallon a day to that tank. Currently, with the piping system we have in, we max out about 5 million gallon a day pumping rate to get to Sanders tank. So that's where, if that line was done today, we could have got more water to the tanks quicker. The problem with that would have been like what Dwayne was talking about, just being all open about it. That's where whenever he's saying that the clear well was at a certain level, well, you got to use the clear well water to backwash. And I know this is going to get a lot of probably too deep, but you can only produce so much water that they're limited to. So even if you had the 24 in, and let's say we was thinking we can get 10 million gallons a day, you got to produce that amount of water, and we're not at that. So there would have been some limitations, but yet could we have done better at getting water to the system? Yes, if it was done. And so in the future, with the 24 inch done and with the SCADA project, once it gets completed, hopefully this does not happen again.
And even when you look at what we were able to do, I've always heard the number of 5 million was the max we could do through the 18-inch line. We were over 5 million going out the door. I think we hit 5.3, 5.4 out the door. So, it would have been better to have that 24-inch in place. But even with the 18, I think we did pretty good at getting the water in the system.
You kept talking about a glitch. When the electricity goes off the water treatment plant, the diesel generators come on and kick in. Is that what you think might have tripped a fuse or something?
No, sir, because what happens is the utility power has to be off for a certain amount of time before that generator recognizes that there's no utility power, and then it turns on, and then there's a delay in the transfer switch before it transfers. That whole process, utility power have to be off for about 45 seconds. So when it's one of these type things, the generator would never turn on. And that's by design. That's to make sure that we're not backfeeding from a generator into the utility power.
And it has to start over every time it does that, the timing.
It will recognize each individual process.
So it sounds like you've done all you could do. I know Michael did, man. I was talking to him and his guys, and not only did they have to deal with that, they had a big water main break and had to deal with that. So my final question is this: as a collectively group, it seems that some of the citizens' concerns out there, which Kyle brought this up too, is some didn't have water, some had low pressure. The neighbor had water, but this neighbor didn't. It was kind of crazy. So as far as a communication thing, if something like this were to happen again, who could they? I know they were calling, and apparently everybody thought that we all knew exactly what was going on. I know I didn't. I just heard the terminology "perfect storm." How can we, as a collective group, get there's no way you can put in a statement everything that we've talked about here in the last 20 minutes in a short term. Now, if you send something short out there to say, hey, it's broke, it's going to take a while, is that going to pacify? Probably not, but to get things out there.
We've talked about it. It's a difficult question because there's always a communication in cold weather that when you have a crawl space or a basement that's not heated, it's a trickle water so that your lines don't freeze. So there's a difference between trickling water and open up a faucet in your bathtub. So you don't want to use that one, you just need to move it slowly. But if you turn around and then say, we need you to conserve water, then the next thing you know, if people follow that and they turn it off, then their line could freeze. And then we end up with a break and a line that's running more water than they were if they were trickling it. So when you look at the decisions that we're making at the time, you're like, what do you say? Because, what we were seeing was low pressure. I'm not saying that people didn't have water, because hindsight's 20/20. We're learning that people didn't have water. But at the time, it was low pressure. So it's like, I was talking to Bruce about water conservation notice, and like, do we not? It's a very difficult decision to make at that time with those extreme temperatures. Is there a different method to communicate to the citizens? Maybe we can collaborate on something that would be a little bit better, but I think we need to spend some time to make sure we have something that's foolproof. From us, on this side, working the thing, you're just trying to make phone calls and talk and make decisions and react. And maybe there's a way we could put something together where there's one person that could be reached out to that could put the things out there to the community that may not be in place today. Then
But if everybody had their water dripping like most people did, that would have used up a lot of water. That might have been one of the reasons you had low water pressure. If everybody left their water dripping, that's got to make up a lot of water.
Yeah, and that's the hard one. How do we know who's doing it? You're right. If everyone was doing it, that would take up pressure, that would take up water. You don't know who's doing it. You're just putting that recommendation out as a precaution so the homeowner doesn't have a line freeze. So you don't know who's actually doing that. And you don't know what that consumption is to know what you have to balance out and what you pump into the system.
Well, I'm going to say thank you to staff, because I know for myself, I was out of town. I know, Michael, you tried to reach me a couple times, and where I was basically a little bit further back than Deliverance. So I was unreachable. And, y'all handled that as best you could, considering all the circumstances going on. So I want to say thank you, because I know Danny's coming in Christmas at 1 a.m. working. Your staff worked through, because whenever I got back, I went out to where y'all were at. And so thank you guys, because y'all gave up your holiday with your families, just like everybody. Everyone's stuck in this situation. You are out here working in the cold. So thank you.
Yeah, I would. It seems like the biggest thing is the communication part, because it took 3 days before something came out from Public Works on what happened. So everything what started happening with this perfect storm, December 23rd, from everything, I know that through Facebook communication, social media, whenever there's a water line break or whatever. I live on Cedar Park Circle. We were known for our water main breaks. So anytime there was a water main break, there's something goes out on social media. Water main break, you're going to have an issue. Why wasn't something put out on social media when this was recognized?
Absolutely.
That's my biggest question, and it seems like that's the questions from the citizens. Why did it take 3 days before something came out and then everything was fixed, or basically everything was on the road to being fixed? That's my biggest thing. Because I work at Vanderbilt, and anytime something happens around the campus or around the area, we get an alert on our email, we get an alert on our phone if we want it. And I know, like I said, the community, depends on social media. So, that's my biggest thing, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but I think there should have been better communication when this perfect storm started happening. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody or anything, but that's another thing to look at in your future planning and your policies and procedures.
And we most certainly will, yes, ma'am.
I just want to add on to what Carol said, but I honestly, being medical, and looking at the scenario, reading through the recap of exactly what happened, I honestly think the missed opportunity here is preventatively. When we're ordering pumps ahead of time preventatively, just in case we need water from Smyrna, I think that's a great time to notify the public, hey, there's potential outage, conserve your water, whatever recommendations you have at that time. But, just preventatively, once we're starting to put a plan in action, just in case, that's a great time to let our citizens know on Christmas Eve, just in case we might be in a tight spot tomorrow, the next day, and the next few days. If you take a look at how Middle Tennessee Electric kind of approaches things with the high capacity, they preventatively alerted the community to try to reduce their demand, and they let them know the possibility of outages before they ever even started the rolling blackout. Just give the community a little bit more time to prepare for these instances.
Any other questions?
And I also want to make a note that I really think that any time that we have a problem with our water service, I think the fire department should be the absolute first people to know. I know, based on the data that you've collected, that things would have been just fine, but for their first notification to be a social media when it's gone out to the public, that is not acceptable. Like, there are lives at risk that we need to consider. So, like I said, the emergency services, fire, most importantly. And I know he said you guys have great working relationships, and this is just kind of a one-off circumstance with everything, it seems like. But emergency services, number one, first and foremost. We got to keep in mind the safety of our citizens overall. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the consent agenda. Need a motion to approve or deny?
Motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve from Alderwoman Haas.
Second.
Second from Vice Mayor No. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to new business. First reading, ordinance 2023-01, and an ordinance to amend Title V, Chapter 4 of the Laverne Municipal Code regarding purchasing. Need a motion to approve or deny?
I make a motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve from Vice Mayor No. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Alderwoman Haas. Alderman Waldron.
No.
Alderwoman Hobbs.
Yes.
Alderwoman Haas.
Yes.
Vice Mayor No.
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion passes. Resolution 2023-01, a resolution authorizing the City of Laverne to participate in the Public Entity Partners Property Conservation Matching Grant Program. Need a motion to approve or deny?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve from Vice Mayor No. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Alderwoman Haas. Alderman Waldron.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hobbs.
Aye.
Alderman Haas.
Aye.
Vice Mayor No.
Aye.
Motion passes. Resolution 2023-02, a resolution authorizing the City of Laverne to participate in the Public Entity Partners Cyber Security Partners Matching Grant Program. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Alderwoman Haas. Alderman Waldron.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hobbs.
Aye.
Alderwoman Haas.
Aye.
Vice Mayor No.
Aye.
I vote aye. Resolution passes. Moving on, number 7, approve a contract for purchase and sale of real estate and lease agreement for 169 Stones River Road, existing Fire Station 41. Need a motion to approve or deny?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve from Vice Mayor No. I'm going to second it for discussion because there was a sticking piece here about the lease agreement. Bruce, did we get that worked out?
Yes, sir. The lease amount will be $500 per month, and that has been put into the lease agreement that's in your packet.
Okay. Should all have that. That's it for questions for me. Anyone have any other discussion?
Just one more. When does the time limit start as far as the 500 a month?
Well, there is no time limit. It'll start once the property exchanges hands
That's what
and until we're able to move out of the building.
and how long will it take before, if it's approved tonight, how long will it take before it's,
There is a period of time, due diligence time, I'm thinking it's 60 days. and then they have to close, I believe, within 30 days after that. So we're looking at approximately 90 days until we close, if everything goes through.
Any other questions?
The concern to me, and I brought up in the workshop, is, the price was 300,000, and the property was auctioned off beside it for 710,000. It brought up, in the workshop that the contents was included, but the contents of the building was auctioned off separate. So the $710,000 was for the building and the property, not for the contents. The shelving, the glass cases, all the merchandise in there was auctioned off, but it was auctioned off separate. The building next door, which the building is bigger, but it's a big difference between $300,000 and $710,000. If you take the building twice as big, you're over twice as big in price. And it's concerned to me about the price. You just go back to the old post office, the code building. We sold it for less than the appraisal, and then it just seemed like we're getting into a pattern that we're selling city property less than the value. And that's something that that really concerned me. Your two properties right next to each other. It don't settle with me real good, and I want to broad up that. But the contents now was not included in the $710,000. None of the contents, the shelving, the showcases, nothing was auctioned off separate. The $710,000 was the building and the property, and we sold the old fire department for $300,000. Basically same size land, which the building was a little bit bigger, but I just concerned about the price.
Well, just to point out, the stormwater building was, the board did vote to go under price. For the public works, it was, as far as stormwater, was under the appraised price. Public works was $100,000 over the appraised price, and this is right at appraised price. So that is part of this, and this is an offer from the purchaser. So just to put that out there, the land size is different. They're not the same. This is a smaller parcel. With that, Alderman Waldron?
I know.
Alderwoman Haas?
No.
Alderwoman Hobbs?
Yes.
Vice Mayor No? Aye. I vote aye. Motion passes. Moving on to appoint or remove board and committee members. First, we've got the beer board. We've got 2 terms expiring and 2 applicants. And this is one that's appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the board. So I will appoint Kevin Oliver and Becky Pollock back to the beer board. All in favor?
Aye. Abstain.
Moving on to the library board. We have got 3 terms expiring. We have 1 applicant that got in before the deadline today. I believe we have another one for next month, but we've got Kayla Koester, and need a motion to appoint this person.
I make a motion to appoint Kayla to the library board.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Second from Vice Mayor No. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have the Local Emergency Planning Committee. We have got, let's see here, 5 terms expiring, and we've got 1 that's a requested change out by the organization. So I'm going to appoint Marty Blair, Daniel Campbell, Brent Hatcher, Chris Schmidt, and Alex Thompson to the Local Emergency Planning Commission. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Moving on to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. We have got 1 term that expired. We've got Chuck Isbell, contacted him. He does want to stay on this board. We also have another applicant as well. This is one where I appoint, the board confirms. I will reappoint Chuck Isbell to the Parks and Recreation Board. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Last, we've got the Stormwater Appeals and Advisory Board. We've got 2 terms that are that have expired. We've got 1 that's wanting to stay on this board. Looks like that is Jeff Moss. I'll make a motion to reappoint Jeff Moss. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Alderwoman Haas. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to Mayor and Alderman comments. Alderman Waldron.
I want everybody to remember the Montgomery family in their prayers for the loss and the family members. Check on the elderly, make sure your pets has got fresh water and shelter. And again, I put a item on the agenda for the 24th or 25th time, and Jason has it removed. Somebody spoke at Citizens Forum about the mayor. That's hitting the nail right on the head. I put the same thing on the agenda over 24 times, and he has removed it 24 times. And that's all. Thank you.
Alderwoman Hobbs.
Yeah, just a reminder, the Laverne Rescue Unit's having a Country Ham fundraiser on January 14th from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Cost is $12 per person. Also wanted to encourage everybody to come out for the MLK Day ceremony on January 16th at 10 a.m. at the Multipurpose Building. And just a reminder to everybody, the annual communication survey is available on the city website through February 28th. You can also get hard copies at City Hall, Parks and Rec, the library, or the Senior Center. So I encourage everybody to complete those surveys.
Alderwoman Hobbs.
Yes, there was a post that came out on Facebook about the baseball, softball signups coming soon. So everyone that wants to sign their children up for baseball and softball, please keep an eye out for the Facebook post. And everybody stay safe.
Thank you. Vice Mayor No.
I just want to brag again on the water guys and, man, guys, and I know y'all were doing all you could do. There may have been some lack of communication, but we weathered that perfect storm. So great job, all you emergency guys. I seen you out there. This thing about the mayor, I've been thinking about this. And I'm not picking on Michael, I'm just bringing him up. If Michael has an employee he has a problem with, it goes to HR. HR goes to Kyle goes to Bruce, and then they talk back and forth. By the time anything gets to this guy, it's a done deal. He's not going to, it's just a matter of somebody putting their name on it. If you take it out of his hand, put it in Bruce, by the time it gets to Bruce, it's a done deal. So that stuff is hearsay. But anyway, thank you guys again for a good job. Hope that doesn't happen again. So, that's it.
Thank you, sir. Well, first off, I do want to remind everyone about the Martin Luther King Day ceremony. It should be wonderful. We have worked very diligently, and when I say we, I'm talking about David McGowan and his staff on getting the guest speakers here. Mr. DeBerry we've been working on that for several years, so very big props to you and your team for that and for everyone who's coming in to work that event. So I hope you all join us. It'll be 10 a.m. down at the Multipurpose Building. I do want to thank staff for working through Christmas on restoring water, including my own, where I live is part of this. So thank you for that. And hopefully we can use this as a building tool and improve things for the next weather event, because regardless, there will be another one of who sits in any of these seats. There will always be weather events. Lastly, when it comes to the Hire and Fire Authority, which is what Alderman Waldron was talking about, yes, I have removed that because, like Vice Mayor No said, it actually is a multi-pronged process, and it comes from a director to HR, through legal, through our city administrators, before it ever gets to me. So that's something that's a check and balance. If you put it on an individual employee, as it's already been threatened in the past, Alderman Waldron, where if they didn't do certain things the board would do, the board would just fire that employee. And I don't think that's right and proper. This allows a check system for everybody, and this was the same process that went on whenever you were mayor. So this is something that's keeping with a normal tradition that has kept the city moving forward and has kept the city out of trouble. So with that, we call the meeting adjourned.